Hello there, it's Susan at We Love Peterborough, and coming on the 24th of February to New Theatre is Bill Kenwright's adaptation of Stephen King's 1982 novella, Rita Hayworth and Shawshank. We all know that the Shawshank Redemption follows the story of Andy Dufresne in the notorious Shawshank, a prison in Maine. He has been committed for murdering his wife and lover. Last week I had the fabulous opportunity to interview Bill Ward, known for his roles in Emmerdale and EastEnders and West End shows like Everyone's Talking About Jamie and Million Dollar Quartet. He plays Warden Stammas, a 3 warden roles in one, a very complicated character.
Very
Okay,
good.
hi Bill. Thank you for doing an interview with me at We Love Peterborough. I'd love to ask you some questions about the Shawshank Redemption.
My pleasure.
The Shawshank Redemption is a story that many people already love. So what made you want to say yes to the stage version?
The story. It's just a very beautiful, uplifting story about a guy, Andy Dufresne, who is wrongly imprisoned for a crime that he didn't commit, and what he is prepared to do to extricate himself from the very dire straits he finds himself in. And it's quite a journey, and it's a journey that takes 30 years, and there are many peaks and troughs. But it's ultimately a really uplifting story about the triumph of the human spirit against formidable odds. And so from that kind of point of view, it's a hugely rewarding piece of theatre to do. And when I both read the original book, the Stephen King novella on which this is based, which was originally written in 1982, and when I read the script, which is written by a couple of comedians, actually, Owen O'Neill and Dave Johns. Dave Johns is from my part of the world, actually, Newcastle upon Tyne, brilliant. Both of the writers are brilliant, both writers and comedians in their own right. But when I read it, it's just one of those stories that sort of it drags you in. It's in the best possible way, brings you in, draws you in, and yeah, I loved it from the moment I read it, and it's just one of those stories that you want to tell.
Lovely. I haven't read the book, so I might have to go and order that and see
Yes, it's
see
short.
how
It's
its
short.
similarities are with the film and with the show when it comes to Peterborough.
Yeah, it's very short. It's only about 110, 111 pages long. It's a
Wow.
novella. So Stephen King wrote a number of short stories, and it's one of them. Yeah, so but it does travel through time,
Yeah.
which is why it makes such an interesting film, because quite a lot, even though it's and play,
Yeah.
quite a lot happens in those 110 pages. So that's why it's a great piece of work.
Lovely. Lots of people will recognise you for playing a wide range of characters, both TV series like Emmerdale and such like, obviously, and film and plays. You play Warden Stammas, lovely person, or maybe not a lovely person. How do you find him as a character, and do you actually like him?
Well, he's fascinating as a character and deeply conflicted. And part of that is because he's 3 people in one.
Okay.
And so in the original novella, there were 3 wardens. So Stephen King wrote 3 wardens. One was called Dunahy, who was a wheeler dealer businessman.
Okay.
One was called Stammas, who was a thoroughly vicious, I suppose, disciplinarian. And one was called Norton, who was a massive God-fearing Baptist. Um, and in the film, they chose to conflate those 3 humans into one and called him Warden Norton.
Mhm.
In the play, we do a similar thing. We conflate those 3 humans into one, and we call him Warden Stammas. But so in that kind of way, from an acting point of view, he's hugely exciting to play because he's three humans in one,
Yeah.
which means he has a number of unusually conflicting character traits. So he's quite prepared to be utterly ruthless in getting what he wants, whilst also being a massive God-fearing Baptist. And
Uh-huh.
those two things make him really interesting from an acting point of view. And so it was one of the things that drew me to the job, actually, and drew me to the part, was getting inside his head. And what is the thing about humans like this is my job is to understand him.
Yeah.
That's my job. My job as an actor is to understand why this human behaves like he does. So we work in reverse order to normal humans
Yeah.
from an acting point of view. So normal humans have thoughts and then they speak.
Yeah.
We start with the written word on the page and then um, work backwards to what the thoughts that generate those words might be, in our opinion. And so what's interesting about him is he is capable of having all sorts of different thoughts that you wouldn't expect to exist within one human. And so my job
Hmm.
is to work out why that might be and what it is that generates those thoughts. And my job is to not judge the character. My job is to understand him
Yeah.
and then join up the thoughts with the words on the page. And if you don't do that, then what it can often sound like is just actors speaking words. But if we do that well, what it sounds like is the natural end point
Yeah.
of the original thoughts that go with it. So yeah, I've loved this bloke,
Hmm.
and I thoroughly enjoy playing him because he's such an unusual contradiction. So much is apparently conflicting in him,
Yeah.
and what I've imagined for him is that he is utterly driven to run the most efficient penitentiary that he possibly can.
Yeah.
Warden Stammas runs the maximum security facility in the state of Maine in the
Yeah.
northern United States. And his job is to rehabilitate the offenders that are sent to him.
Hmm.
Now, all of those people who end up in his prison are already proven guilty.
Yeah.
It is not his job to decide whether they are guilty or innocent. The courts have already found them guilty. So his assumption, and to his mind, it's the right assumption because the courts should be doing their job, is everyone who lands in his jail is guilty.
Yeah.
His job is to rehabilitate them and allow them back into the public domain as and when, and only as and when, they are safe to let back into the public domain. So that's his job. And his job is to do that as efficiently and as effectively as he possibly can. Now, what he thinks his way of doing that is he will do whatever it is in his power to ensure that happens.
Yeah.
And if that means he runs quite a strict ship, which he does,
Yeah.
then he will do that. And he also does let one or through two things onto the net, a little bit of illicit contraband arriving in the prison, just because he's aware that just only sort of whoops, I'm knocking things over here. If you only keep a lid on stuff, at some point it's all going to blow. So
Yeah.
he just allows just enough stuff coming through and keeps a lid on it, and he has eyes everywhere. He sees everything.
Yeah.
So the guards are his eyes and ears in the prison, but also he will have informants amongst the prison population too.
Yeah.
So in that kind of way, and also what he's done is he's originated this brilliant idea, which is to get some of the prisoners to work outside the prison and build things like highways, buildings, etc. Now, he often offers the prisoners work at a cheaper rate than normal humans are able to do it. And as far as he's concerned, everybody's happy because he's rehabilitating the prisoners.
Yes.
They are A, working, B, so doing a normal job, B, working in the outside domain and therefore getting used to working outside in the real world as and when they are rehabilitated and free to leave. The people who hire his prisoners are getting them at a cheaper rate than they would have to pay generally, and he is quietly creaming quite a lot of that off the top because it's a really brilliant idea. And why wouldn't he get money for doing that? Because it's his idea. And also, he will not be sort of at the time, prisons were famously corrupt places because the staff weren't getting paid as much as they thought they should be getting paid for working in such a vicious environment. So from his point of view, he isn't doing anything wrong at all. In fact, in many ways, he's providing a service to the state. And so the kind of the general take on from the outside, now this is dreadful corruption from the outside. It's absolutely unforgivable. However, from Warden Stammas's point of view, it is absolutely fine. And in fact, in many ways, he's running a brilliant operation with brand new ideas, rehabilitated prisoners, and he's providing, as far as he is concerned, a public service to the wider state. So in that kind of a way, as far as he's concerned, everybody wins. What he is prepared to do within the prison to make all of that happen is pretty, to an outside eye, is utterly ruthless. To him, what he thinks he's doing is doing everything within his power to run the safest possible environment for the greater good, for the greater number of the prisoners there. And if that means he has to make examples of some prisoners, brackets, kill them if he has to, close brackets, then he will, because he thinks that is to the greater good of the greater number. So it's quite, he's such an unusual character, such a conflicted soul. And for me, part of the joy is not a word I would use with this character, but although he does take pride in his work, but part of my job is to try and work out how in his head I can balance what would appear to be very ruthless behavior, but with some kind of moral compass, because he clearly has one, being a God-fearing Baptist. And it's my job to do those things. And so I found him utterly fascinating from a human point of view. And also my job is, because audiences, when they come and see this play, the way it's written is they root for the prisoners, and two of them in particular, they root for Andy Dufresne and Red Redding, both of whom played brilliantly, incidentally, by Joe McFadden and Benon Wootwee. Just beautiful performances. And it's my job to form the counterpoint to that. And sort of the stronger and harder and clearer I can make Warden Stammas, the more you root for the two protagonists. And so it's my job to set up that counterpoint, basically. And so the play works as an ensemble.
It's nice to hear someone like you peel back the layers on a particular character that maybe the audience will hate instantly.
Yeah.
But it's nice to hear that other side where you actually sit back and then think, Right, okay, that's why he's doing that. And obviously he's right to some extent. So it'll be
Where
nice to
he thinks
see.
he is.
Yes.
That's the important thing
Yeah.
is you just have to find it's very rare unless you're doing panto where often the baddies are bad and
Yeah.
they know they are.
Yeah.
For
He just
in the
thinks he's
real
good.
world,
Yeah.
yeah. In the real world, what you're looking to do is most humans will act with some kind of justification for what they're doing.
Yeah.
And so for my job is to find what that justification might be in
Yeah.
this particular case and then play it.
Wow. Okay. Without giving too much away, what can audiences expect from the stage production that's going to be a bit different from how the film is? And is there a particular moment in the play that you really like acting out or
Yeah,
doing?
I mean, both the film and the play are based on the original book, on the
Yeah.
original novella, but the play is not based on the film. So and the film did take liberties with the original book in a really good way,
Yeah.
incidentally, in a brilliant Frank Darabont, magnificent director. The Shawshank Redemption film, one of the greatest films of all time,
Definitely.
was nominated for a number of Oscars in the year when it was released in 1994. A wonderful, magnificent piece of work, one of my favourite films
Mm.
growing up, and it will be for a number of your listeners
Yeah.
and readers. But for me, we tend to be slightly more faithful to the book than the film is. We'll still take artistic liberties because
Yeah.
we only have a cast of 10. So we have to do what we do with the narrative and with the story to tell the story on a stage in one fixed place. We don't have a camera that can follow us around
No,
to
that's right.
loads
You've
of
got
different
to,
locations. We've
yeah,
got to make it work on a stage, whatever it is, 40 feet by 20.
yeah,
So it's up to us to try and make that work in one place. And what we do is we use a lot of light and but the set itself is a brilliant piece of design. Feels very austere, but the story itself is very faithful actually to the original book. One or two tweaks here and there because we have to, but it's very faithful to the original book, and the book story is just hugely uplifting. So, from my kind of point of view, from our point of view, it's a really uplifting night out, even though it goes to some extremely dark places. It's really about hope versus adversity, really
yeah,
staying true to yourself and believing in yourself enough to do things that you hadn't originally imagined that you were capable of. So in loads of ways, there is a lot of humanity in
yeah,
this piece, even though there are various parts of it where there is a complete absence of it. And so you find yourself rooting for the protagonists against a system in which the odds are wholly stacked against them.
mhm,
And so in that kind of a way, it's a very beautiful piece of work. It's also very funny, incidentally, surprisingly funny, because it was originally written by two comedians. It was originally written for the Edinburgh Festival back in the day for a group of comedians to do something straight while
right,
they were on the festival making comedy. And so in that kind of way, it's still got those roots, which is really useful given how dark the subject matter is. It's really, the dialogue is brilliantly written. It's very bouncy. And so the show bounces along really nicely. And so from an acting point of view, it's great because you know it's quite light, heavy subject matter, lightly addressed. And from the audience point of view, you've always got something. The characters are very easy to warm to, apart from the ones
apart from you.
one of the ones that I'm playing, for instance. But apart from the guys who are in charge of the institution, a
Yeah.
lot of the other characters are very easy to warm to, and that's because of the writing. So yeah, so it's a lovely mixture of warm writing on top of cold subject matter.
So we'll have a bit of a wave sort of
Yes,
presentation and
yeah, it's
emotion
lovely
and
peaks and troughs. It bounces along in
yeah,
a really beautiful way.
good. Your production is touring. It's been touring since September, I believe, last year, and you're currently in the beautiful Bath doing a show there. How do you feel about touring around the country?
Well, I love it. I love it. I'm a traveller, and I've done loads of travelling. Sort of, I took 2 years off. I used to have a set before I was an actor. I started acting quite late professionally, although I've been acting all my life at school and university, all of those kind of things. But I didn't go to drama school until I was 32,
Oh,
and so. Previous to that, I had a proper job, a sort of very serious job. I worked in advertising agencies as an account director and as a strategic planner. And then I took a couple of years off to travel.
hmm.
And I went all over the world and South America, Asia, you named it, you name it. I kind of went there. So I love traveling and I love traveling around this country.
Yeah,
Um, that has to be tempered with I'm a dad and I have a beautiful partner and two beautiful children, and so that is always a sort of you have to sort of square the circle with what I do for a living. So I get home whenever I possibly can. So wherever we are on a Saturday night, if it's drivable, I'll drive home, and
good.
then I'll have Sunday at home with the kids and my other half, and then we'll start again on Monday and or Tuesday, whichever day we're starting that week. So in that kind of a way, I always go back home. So I'm never fully on tour. I'm always going to a place and then back home, to a place and then back home, to a place and then back home. And on a tour like this, so that'll be 30 venue tour this approximately.
Yeah.
So yeah, so that's a lot of getting in the car and driving, but I love that, and I love how diverse this country is,
Oh,
and it both
definitely.
and in terms of the different kinds of places you go and all of the local history. I've got a history degree. So for me, going to all of these disparate venues is fascinating, not only in terms of the theatres that we find ourselves in, but the communities and what drives those communities and why these towns and cities are built in the places that they were, often trading places, market towns, often built on rivers, often built on water, or often
Yeah.
built on roads. So in those kinds of ways, I find it's sort of the touring part of it absolutely fascinating, because you get to go around the country, and also for us, we'll be doing this play over 200 times over the course of the run,
Yeah.
and every audience is different. Even every audience in every city is different, but the cities, the towns, just everyone gets something slightly different about the play, and you
Hmm.
kind of you feel that. And every time we stand on a stage at the start of every week, it's different. The building is different. The stage is
Yeah.
roughly the same size, although it does sort of change size. We bring the set in and out depending on how big the theatre is. But the moment you walk on stage, you just get a sense of other every time you do the play. So from my point of view, that's absolutely fascinating,
Interesting.
and we love it. We love touring, and it goes with our territory. So I've done a fair amount of touring over the years. I've toured a number of productions, and I love it because you get to see the country, and what a wonderful country we live in.
Well, leading to that, obviously, your other side of you is a professional photographer. So you like having a camera in your hand. Will you have any time to take any photos whilst you're in beautiful Peterborough?
Well, we'll see. We'll see. I do hope so. I mean, the way this works is my job when I'm touring a play like this is 100% concentrated on the acting,
Sure.
and so my job is to make sure that we all and all of our jobs turn up with enough energy to for the show at 7:30 every evening. And we will all do different things during the day to make sure that is the case. Some will watch box sets, some will read books, some of us will go to museums, all of those kinds of things and sort of investigate where we are is one of the joys of touring, actually. And
Yeah.
sometimes when I do that, I'll do it with a camera. So I'll take my camera out. I generally always carry a camera. And so and what I always try and do, if I possibly can, is get digs. We all stay in either super budget
Yeah.
hotels or usually for me, what I'm doing is I'm staying in the spare rooms of other people's houses, and I kind of like that because you
Yeah.
kind of get a sense talking to the people who live in a place. You get a sense of the city or the town wherever you are, and I kind of like that, and you get an into the sort of the place itself that you happen to be visiting. And then what I always try and do is that's within walking distance. So I'll walk anything up to 45 minutes
Yeah.
of the theatre, and I'll carry a camera in between the two. So I will often take pictures on the way from my digs into the theatre, just depending on what I bump into. And
Yeah.
photography is essentially about noticing.
Yeah.
And we all notice different things. And so my general thing is to see what I notice in between the digs, that the place I happen to be staying, and the theatre itself. But I do that with a very light touch. If I do sort
Yeah.
of take pictures, I wouldn't be out for more than an hour and a half
Yeah. To get
during
your
the day.
mindset
Just
ready and
yeah, to make sure we're ready for the performance in the evening, because this stuff, Shawshank Redemption carries a lot of. You need a fair amount of juice to
yeah.
do it. It carries a lot of emotional, the emotional tariff on it is quite high. And so for all of us, we all make sure that we've got enough in the tank to make sure that we absolutely do it the most amount of justice we possibly can every evening.
Okay. Finally, for anyone in Peterborough who is still deciding whether to come and book tickets or not, what do you say to them to tempt them along?
Well, it's just a great night out. It's one of those, from our experience of touring it thus far, it's one of those kinds of shows where people walk out of the building, out of the theatre, in a very different frame of mind to when they walked in. And so there is a journey with this play, and it's
Yeah.
as we've kind of talked about, it's a bit of a roller coaster ride. There's some great joy in it. It's ultimately hugely uplifting, and it is really about what makes us tick as humans. And so the subject matter is fascinating and ultimately very beautiful, I think. But there are some very dark places on the way, and
Wow.
so in that kind of a way, we love doing it because the audiences go on a proper journey, and so yeah, it's a really fascinating night out, I think, and it's a really compelling story, and we very much hope you enjoy it.
I can't wait to see it. Thank you very much, Bill, for your time and giving us a little bit of insight into the show that's coming up at the new theatre in Peterborough. Thank you.
Thanks.